in a cavern, in a canyon, excavating for a mine, lived a miner, 49er, and his daughter, Clementine. Oh, my darling, oh, my darling. Is that it? Oh, 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 Eureka, Eureka! No, it's not there. Oh, howdy, I'm Chandler O'Quinn. Welcome to Chandler's Travels. Today, I'm here at Sutter's Mill, where gold was first discovered. Well, maybe not first discovered, but the big discovery place of gold in California. I'm trying my hand at it here. Gas prices in California are they're kind of pricey, so I'm hoping to find a few flecks to help ease the pain at the pump. No luck so far, but come back and hopefully I'll have some better news for you. Hope you enjoy it. I'm here at Sutter's Mill, the place where the gold rush started, where James Marshall discovered little flecks of gold in the sawmill he was constructing for Mr. Sutter. So I'll be taking a look around some of the interesting spots here and the story of how all of this got started. All right, the story of Sutter's Mill, the story of discovery of gold in California, the impetus that caused what I've seen in secondary sources as people saying the largest free migration of people in history, from all around the world, coming here to the valleys of Northern California to pine for gold. That all begins with the discovery of gold here. That is to say that there are other times that gold was discovered in California. As someone who is a native of the Santa Clarita Valley, it was there that they have the Oak of the Golden Dream, where a man, last name is Lopez, was sleeping under this oak and dreamt of golden fortunes, and then woke up and dug for onions, and there was gold there. That caused sort of an initial gold rush for Mexican rule in California in the early 1840s. But that was not to last. Once the conquest of California happened in the Mexican-American War, and it was brought under American control, all of the people who had come from Mexico to the Santa Clarita Valley went back home, and that ended that industry there. So now it's the war is wrapping up, the Mexican-American War. It is 1847. John Sutter sees all of the opportunities that lay for people to come to his town, the town that was the impetus for all of this to happen, for California to be brought into America. New Helvetia, near Sutter's Fort, but he needs timber. So he decides to build a lumber mill, cut down all the trees around here, make it into boards, and send all of that down to what is now Sacramento. He contracts with a man named James Marshall. Marshall was born in New Jersey in the early 1800s, I think around 1804. He moves to Missouri, and then he gets malaria. He survives, but they tell him that for his health, it would be better to move out west. So he goes through the Oregon Trail throughout 1844. He gets to the area around Sutter's Fort in the spring of 1845. He is I believe he's part of the relief force that Fremont organizes to resupply Sonoma during the Bear Flag Revolt. I don't know if he is or not, but he has a great quote about it that we'll talk about in the Bear Flag video. Not sure if that's coming up before or after this, but keep your eyes peeled. Marshall had gotten land and a large head of cattle, but all of that was stolen while he was fighting in the conquest for California. So he needed money, he needed employment, and he goes back to Sutter, and Sutter says, I need a mill, can you help me build the mill? For all the lumber I'm going to need to build my town, this town filled with farmers and merchants that I want to create here in the Sacramento Valley. So Marshall gets together. There are some Nisenan Indians, some of which are working against their will, but there are others who are helping Marshall and Sutter figure out where to build the mill, and they come across the Columa Valley. That this is perfect for creating a trail to get you back down to Sutter's Fort. It's got the river, the American River here, that you can use and channel to make a water-operated sawmill. And so they set up here. That they search for a while throughout 1847, settle on this area in August, and then with some Nisenan, some Miwok Native Americans, and then also members of the Mormon Battalion. The Mormon Battalion had been organized up in Iowa to come and fight in the Mexican-American War here in California. There's a great museum in San Diego talking about that whole experience. And now, what are they going to do? They're going to go back to Utah and create what we know of as, it says, Salt Lake City and all of that. But that's a long way to go. And they need money and work before they do that. So a handful of them are chosen to help Marshall make the sawmill. So they come up and first they build one cabin for all of them. So there's about 6 laborers of the Mormon Battalion, and then there's another couple, Wimmer, the Wimmer couple. So Mrs. Wimmer is the housekeep for all of these men. And the men, like Henry Bigler is one of them, complain that she's cooking the meals and she's feeding it to her family before them on purpose. She's giving them the good stuff on purpose. And she says, you're not here when I cook dinner. Yeah, so I'm feeding my family first. So then the other guys, they create their own cabin so that they can cook for themselves. And I'm sure Mrs. Wimmer appreciated that. So they are working on getting the rivers just beyond these trees here, getting the river up, or maybe not, up's maybe not the right directional word, but to get the river, channel it through to use the water to operate the mill, the sawmill. That's what they're working on throughout the late fall and into the early winter of 1847 going into 1848. By Christmas time, Marshall leaves. He goes back to Sutter's Fort to get some supplies. And he's gone for about a month, so about from Christmas to January 23rd. So he arrives back here January 23rd, 1848, and we'll pick up with the rest of the story in a minute. Behind me is a replica of Sutter's mill. From the fall through early winter of 1847, 1848, this is what they were working on, the construction of this mill and the diverting of the American River to go through a sluice. And that sluice channels through here to operate a big wheel, and that wheel turns the saw blades. Well, they were having trouble because the exit of the sluice, get the water through back to the river, it wasn't deep enough. So the water was kind of jamming and the saw wasn't working. So when James Marshall left around Christmas time of 1847, he told the men to make the channel deeper. And so that's what they were working on through the early part of January of 1848. Marshall comes back January 23rd and tells the men to leave the sluice open overnight so that we can see if it's jamming when we wake up in the morning. So they do that. He wakes up bright and early, January 24th, 1848, and he's examining the sluice. And as he is looking to see the water levels and how it's moving, he looks down in the channel where the dirt had gotten packed in to the sluice, and he sees something shiny. And he reaches down and picks it up, and he moves it around in his fingers. And he said that his heart thumped because he knew it was gold. He, of course, took a bite, because gold is soft. So if you pound on it, it's not going to break. That's the difference between, well, one of the many differences between gold and fool's gold, pyrite. Pyrite will shatter. Real gold, that's why you always see the miners, taking a bite, or even the Olympians today, taking a bite out of their gold medal, because real gold will dent. It will soften, but it will not break. And so Marshall did that, and it stayed just a little bit of a dent there. Then he started taking it between rocks and pounding it in between the rocks, and again, it didn't break. So he's finding these little flecks. He eventually finds, I think, one that's about the size of a thumbnail, a little nugget, and he starts collecting them in a handkerchief, and he goes to one of the workers, I think his name is Scott, and says, I found gold. And Scott's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Let's get back to building this mill. You don't know what you're talking about. But Marshall is starting to put it together, that as they say in the old movies, there's gold in them there hills. After Marshall picks up the flecks of gold and even one about half the size of a thumbnail nugget, he's trying to test the gold, and after determining for himself that he's pretty sure it is gold, he gives it to Jenny Wimmer, because Wimmer knows that if you boil it in lye, the lye is so toxic that if it were any other type of metal, it wouldn't survive. It would lose its luster. So they're thinking maybe it's copper or something else. They're not sure. So she gets a pot of lye, puts the flecks of gold in there, and boils it overnight in the lye, and it's still shiny. It is still gold. So Jenny Wimmer is the second person to verify that this is gold. Marshall will further verify later on. But really interesting that Miss Jenny Wimmer and her knowledge of chemistry helped us in figuring out that there's gold in California. So Marshall is getting more and more validation of his hypothesis that these little pieces, these flecks, small nuggets are indeed gold. So he collects what he can find in a handkerchief, and he rides back down to Sutter's fort. He goes to John Sutter and says, lock the door. I think that there's a major development in your sawmill. There's gold. And so Sutter takes that in and he starts making tests of his own. They look in an encyclopedia that Sutter has to kind of figure out how you determine if you have gold. So they run tests. One of them is they take the gold and an equal weight in silver and they drop them in water, and the gold sinks faster than the silver, even though they're the same weight. It's the density of the gold, I believe, that brings it down faster. They do an acid test on it, just like Jenny Wimmer had done, but with a different kind of acid. They did all sorts of weights and measures. First they just make one with like a redwood twig and sort of measure it all out, and everything's coming up gold. Well, Sutter knows that this is going to derail everything, that this dream that he has of making a wonderful agricultural settlement in California, you're not going to get the hardy farmers that you want. You're going to get fortune seekers. So he tries to keep it quiet. Don't tell anyone. And Marshall tries not to. Sutter even breaks his own rule, eventually writing letters to General Vallejo about it. Then you have the other people who are here in Coloma, the other workers, and they start picking up flecks on their own, and none of them shirk their responsibilities, not that I've seen. But when they're not working, they're in the river. And so there's one specifically, Henry Bigler, who, here's some logs here that are supposed to be going over to the mill. And when it's his days off, he's saying, hey, I'm going to go duck hunting. I'm just going to go out looking for ducks. That's all I'm looking for is ducks. Well, he's looking for the duck that laid the golden egg. He's looking for gold. So he's out on the other side of the river in the snow melt, sifting through, using just dish pans, tin plates to try and shake it around and see if he can find more. And he does. He finds flecks and nuggets, and their contract is only to build the mill, not necessarily to operate it. So they do that. They get the mill operational, and then they're in the river looking for gold. And they're not the only ones by the time we get to the spring of 1848. Well, word got out. There's gold in California. Marshall and Sutter had been trying to keep it to themselves, but there's all these other people, just a handful that were here, start telling their buddies, and it just starts to get out, and this dream that Sutter had of a beautiful agricultural economy out the window as this river becomes flooded with fortune seekers. First, it's the locals, the people who are here in California, the people who are in the Sacramento Valley. They start making their way up the Coloma Trail here. Then we have the people from Yerba Buena, or maybe by this point it is called San Francisco, the newspaper reporters. They start hearing about it, so then they come up. There's one, and I'm forgetting his name, but he is a real cool looking dude. He's got mutton chops and a soul patch. And he comes up to here and finds gold for himself. He goes back to San Francisco, and first thing he does is buy every pick, shovel, pan, anything that could be used to help you get gold. Then he puts it in the paper, and then he goes up and down the streets of San Francisco yelling, "Gold, gold, gold in California, gold on the American River. Get your shovels and picks and pans with me right here. $30 a pop." But it could be your chance to be a millionaire. It was actually his chance to be a millionaire. He becomes the first millionaire in California. And all of that was, as they say, from mining the miners. So that opened the floodgates. Then the Army investigates, and William Tecumseh Sherman is a lieutenant here in California in the U.S. Army, and he finds out about the gold. He confirms the gold is here, and then he sends someone to go and tell them in Washington, D.C., across the continent, that there's gold in California. And I'm pretty sure, I don't remember the names right now, but the Army and the Navy raced to see who could get the news there faster. The way that they did it was... Editor Chandler here. I got a lot of details wrong when I said this on the banks of the North Fork of the American River. So I thought I'd slip in here and tell you just a very short version of this amazing story. William Tecumseh Sherman has to get evidence of gold in California to the president, and so there's a race between the Army and the Navy. The Navy, they entrust Edward Beale to take this information. Edward Beale actually ends up going more overland than the Army does. So the Army goes to Panama, crosses over the isthmus, but there's all of these storms and all these delays. Beale, who is in the Navy, goes into Mexico. He crosses over Mexico through storms. He disguises himself. He tans his skin. He wears all these weird costumes. He dresses up as a vaquero. He books it across Mexico, gets to Veracruz, gets on a ship, takes him to Mobile, takes stagecoaches all the way up to Washington, D.C., gets to Washington a full 2 months before the Army does, and told President Polk. And then in December of 1848, President Polk told the nation, there's gold in California. So, all of this begs the question, how did the gold get here in the first place? Now, bear with me, I'm not a geologist, but I play one on TV. I don't know. I got curious. So here's a historian's best stab at explaining why the gold's here in the first place. So, gold can only be formed by a dying star. As the star goes into supernova, it is sending out radiation and rays that can amplify the amount of atomic weight of different elements, and literally can make lead into gold. So the thing that the alchemists were trying to do, stars do it. That's how gold is made. Then it's sent out into the atmosphere, and as the Earth was forming, fell down, and in the ground, what I believe it is like you get, just in our regular rocks, it's 1 particle per billion particles will be gold. But it's more in the ocean and in the ocean sediment. It's like 20 particles in a billion particles will be gold. You'll notice the mountains around here. That's because of the tectonic plates Pangea, all that moving around. And the North American plate collided. I guess, let's see, if I'm showing it to you like this, how's it gonna, I'll do it the opposite. So North American plate, Pacific plate, smash into each other and then create a subduction zone. As that subduction zone happens, I feel like quoting Dr. Zayas, the forbidden zone, the subduction zone, that Pacific plate starts to go underneath the North American plate, and it traps seawater in there with that gold. And then it makes it very high pressure. They call it black plumes. And that is able to extract more gold out of, see a bug on my hat. I got the bug. Okay, back to our story. Subduction zone, trapped water, black plumes, extract gold and minerals through these little channels. That's why gold appears in veins, because there's little channels inside the mountains. A lot of times it attracts quartz, and inside that quartz is gold trapped in the mountain. Then over thousands, millions of years, it eroded, and that gold made its way into the river. Surface finds are called placer. Placer deposits, it's a Spanish word for sand. Those placer deposits are what the 49ers were finding in the river. In the mountains, there are much harder to get to, but also more accumulated pieces of gold. Most of the time, that's not what the 49ers were looking at. You get into the 1850s and 60s, by the time they're actually going into these mountains to find the mother lode. That's what all this is called, the mother lode, because there was still active, substantial gold mining happening in California into the 1960s, and in Nevada, it's still happening. Most, I believe, of the country's gold right now is coming from Nevada, on the other side of the Sierra Nevada mountains here, from literally stardust that was trapped in mountains for thousands and thousands of years. Anyway, that's my best stab at giving you the geological explanation for why there's gold and then there are hills. Part of the Sutter's Mill site includes the Gold Discovery Museum. That's what's behind me here. Really interesting museum. I would actually recommend maybe parking here and getting your admission done through here. I went straight to the Discovery site because that's where I want to be. But if you don't have cash on you, then that's going to be a problem to get admission there. You can pay with card here at the museum. Lots of great things inside of there. It's small, but packs a punch. Top-notch mannequins. California's really on its game with its mannequins. Also, they kind of have, I love when people recreate the outdoors inside. That's one of my favorite things in the world. As I've said before, I don't actually like being outside. It's very hot most of the time. I don't like being hot, but it's not too bad today. Inside there, they've recreated parts of the American River and little scenes dedicated to the Native American history, the Nisenan and Miwok people who originally settled here in Coloma. They have a nice little scene with them, and they have this running water, and I swear that this running water they have treated with bromine, which is what they use. It's similar to chlorine. It's what they use in theme parks. It has that theme park water smell. It's like I'm about to go on Splash Mountain or Pirates of the Caribbean. I love that smell. If you like that smell, you can come here and you can enjoy that smell. They have lots of artifacts in there, things that actually belong to James Marshall. So James Marshall's gun, James Marshall's cribbage board, James Marshall's mining, prospecting hammer. All of these things are on display inside of there, and really well put together, considering how small it is. And the gift shop here has lots of things that I don't want to carry with me right now, but I'll be back to purchase some great things in my life as a living historian and reenactor. Some good materials that I can use for that part of my life. So definitely recommend coming to the museum. The rest of this park is representing what the town of Coloma was following the discovery. So this discovery by Marshall and Sutter that neither one of them really got the benefit from. But lots of other people did. They created a town, and then once they had mined as much gold as they could in the rivers and in the mountains, they started thinking, you know where we never looked for gold is the ground that we built our buildings on. So they started tearing down buildings and looking underneath them to see if there's any gold there. So that's why there's not much of the town left, but they've recreated some of it, and I'll take you along. That's what the whole thing is, taking you along with me on the journey to see what some of these historic buildings would have looked like back in the 1850s to the 1880s. Interesting thing about the park here, gold discovery site, they named the highway that runs through it Highway 49 after the 49ers. Literally, as I didn't know that was the road, as I turned down the road, I was like, oh, that's cute. So that's, you'll see some trucks running behind me there. And then on this side is the Wahop Chinese store. So I picked up the little pamphlet in there, lots of really interesting information from the 48 census said there were 20 Chinese people in all of California. By 1850, it was 600. By 1855, it was 20,000. It was faster to get here from Canton than New York. Either way you looked at it. It was faster to get here from Australia than it was to get from New York or anywhere east of the Rockies. That involved a trip around the world to go all the way down the coast, the east coast. You either then stopped at Panama and walked across Panama to get another ship. Either way you slice it, you're looking at 40 days, 60 days, somewhere in there, directly from China, whereas you're looking at 3 months, 4 months if you're going around the Horn, and if you're walking, good luck. If you misjudge your timing, you could end up like the Donner Party. So one of the explanations for why there were so many Chinese immigrants coming here. This was one of the largest Chinatowns in California. After the plaster deposits had all run out, lots of the other immigrants here left, the Chinese stayed. They were willing to work harder to get at the hard-to-get pieces of gold that were still in the ground. And they created a thriving community, which included something like this, this restored Wahop store, which is where they would have had their grocery. It also provided mail services to get letters back to China. And there's a religious spiritual altar that's in there, and all sorts of other things to tell that story. In the 1860s, because they were still succeeding because of how hard that they were working and others weren't, there was some racial strife and a mob that looted and burned part of the Chinatown here. And yet they persevered all the way through the 1880s. There was a big fire, and that burned most of the buildings around here that weren't torn down to find the gold underneath them. And that's kind of why Coloma isn't as big as it was. And a lot of the Chinese immigrants that were here moved to other places like San Francisco. But a really interesting part of the gold mining story is the Chinese contribution to all of that, which you can find out more inside there. Part of the state park, they've set aside an area to show you a little bit of what the Nisenan Village would have looked like. The Nisenan, the native peoples to this area, made structures out of tree bark, and had been living in Coloma. They named the village Coloma for hundreds, thousands of years. Next to the two structures that they have, they also have a example of one of their baskets. Their life was very much dependent on the trees. They are making their structures, and of course, you would think that the Anglos and Europeans would have seen some sort of similarities with this. I mean, we were definitely dependent on wood as well, but not only are the trees serving as their structures, it's also one of their primary forms of sustenance. So they are grabbing the acorns, and they are going through a whole process of making the acorns safe to consume. And one of the ways that they would do this, they would prepare the acorns, leaching them for a long time in water to get all of the tannins out, and then taking the acorns to a grinding stone. I believe it's called a chaussee. At least that's what it's spelled. I may be mispronouncing it. And what they have next to these recreated structures, they put these here because there is a sacred rock. They call it the Grandmother Rock. And you can see the dents, I guess sort of like a mortar and pestle of where they had dug in there, grinding the acorns for hundreds of years, for many, many generations. Grinding the acorns to make flour, to make bread, to make mush or all sorts of other foods. That rock is still here. It's the whole reason why they were here, which is then the reason why Sutter and Marshall come here, is because of the village that already existed and made it the perfect area, not only for them, but then also for the mill and then the discovery of the gold. So I've decided to pull off and enjoy a little bit of lunch here on the banks of the American River. Over to my right, there's a really interesting saga between the floaters of the American River. Tyler is stuck between two rocks, his compatriots are trying to rescue him, especially because I think he's holding the cooler with all of the precious valuables in it. Really, it's something that you could see play out probably 180 years ago, right here on these very same banks. So, as for me and my precious valuables, I have prepared a lunch very similar to what the 49ers may have carried with them when they came to the banks of the American River. So first, I have a chili pemmican. So pemmican is a Native American dish, dates back generations and generations, where you take dried bison or dried beef and you pound it into a fine, it's not really a powder, but it's almost, it's just ground completely. And you mix that with different berries and herbs and spices, and you bind it all together with tallow. The Texans that came to the Sacramento Valley described carrying with them a chili pemmican. So they got together ground beef and native peppers, chili piquin, ancho chilies, cumin, all of that, and bound it together with beef tallow, and it's shelf stable for months. So they could just bring it and take a bite off as they needed it. It's very calorie dense, so just a little square could be 2,000 calories, could get you through the whole day. And if you were able to stop for a while, you could actually put it together in a pot with some water. If you had some masa or maybe some leftover sourdough, you could thicken it and make chili, bowl of red. I mean, what's more Texan than that? Combined with that, I've also picked up some sourdough from a local bakery. The sourdough is an integral part of Northern California bakery culture. A lot of that has to do with the miners. So these miners would oftentimes carry around their sourdough starter on their belts. Right next to their gun and their Bowie knife. Like this was very important. Fights were had over sourdough starter. It's the perfect bread. It happens very quickly and it tastes good. And so that became the bread of the 49ers. So to have some of this chili pemmican, oh yeah. The chili piquin kind of warms you in the back of your throat as it goes down. It's perfect, especially if you've been ankle, knee deep, waist deep in snow melt. I could imagine that was really nice. And then some sourdough. And then wash it down with some black coffee. And if you didn't have access to coffee, the Native Americans here, the Miwok and Nisenan, they could actually make coffee out of acorns. But this is not acorn coffee. This is a good regular black coffee. So I think I'm gonna enjoy my little lunch here on the banks of the American River, just as the 49ers would have done all those many years ago. So, what happened to James Marshall and John Sutter? I mean, this gold was discovered on Sutter's land, thanks to James Marshall, his trust in what he had found. So what happened? They died millionaires, right? Actually, no. John Sutter, the whole time, never wanted anything to do with the gold. So really didn't capitalize on it either. I see some parallels between him and Thomas Jefferson and their kind of their viewpoint of what they wanted the country to be. They wanted it to be yeoman farmers, even though Sutter was not very much of a yeoman himself. He forced others to work for him. Thomas Jefferson did the same thing. But Sutter was so focused on California being farm country that as all of these fortune seekers just piled in, he tried to get them to come to his city, his town, but they created a whole different town down the river. They created Sacramento because that's where the ships unloaded. And they didn't care about going to Sutter's Fort or New Helvetia because that was too far for them. They had to get their picks and shovels and come here. And so Sutter's Fort dwindled. Sutter eventually had to leave. There was some trouble with some squatters and squatters' rights, and the fact that Sutter had a Mexican land grant, and that led him to going to Washington, D.C., and he ends up dying there and is buried back in Switzerland. James Marshall also, while not necessarily having a viewpoint of what this should be, he just didn't capitalize on it. He was operating the mill until there weren't any more people to operate it with him. He did some mining, but most of his mining ventures failed. And then he focused on agriculture. As Coloma lost the miners because all of the placer deposits were gone, it started to turn towards agriculture, which is what Sutter wanted the whole time. And now this area is one of the most abundant agricultural areas in the whole country. It's kind of interesting how that all came full circle. Marshall opened a vineyard, had over 100 different types of grapes that he was growing on his land. He still was not successful. It's interesting how both the Sutter and Marshall saw the California of the mid to late 20th century and were just too early for their own time in certain ways. Marshall dies, I think it's Kelseyville, just a little bit away from here, nearly penniless. He had been taking up a pension from the state of California because this wouldn't be a state as quickly as it happened without Marshall. But the war is over in 48, and California's made a state in 51, the 31st state of the Union, because of the influx of immigrants, because of the gold that James Marshall found. So the legislators in Sacramento recognized this, but they didn't re-up on the pension. So the pension expired, and he had to go back to doing carpentry and blacksmithing and jobs like that, and then he died, and he was laid to rest, and they decided in the 1890s, hey, you know, he was pretty important. James Marshall, he's kind of the whole reason that California became a state as quickly as it did. The economy of California became what it did. The makeup, the cultural, everything from all these different immigrants coming here so quickly is because it may have happened anyway, but the way that it did happen was because of the discovery of gold by James Marshall. So the Sons of the Golden West got together. That's sort of the heritage group in California. They got together and got the funds together to create a monument and a tomb. And they built that here. So that's what's behind me, is James Marshall's tomb and monument. He is pointing down to the mill, to the place where he discovered gold on that January morning in 1848. A discovery that would lead to so many ripples and consequences. Just while examining the tail run for a sawmill that never really operated. Fascinating. This is a place that I've wanted to come to since I was a kid, learning about there aren't a whole lot of things that get covered in U.S. history class that are of the Western experience. It's a lot of talking about politics of the Jacksonian era or Reconstruction, wars, sometimes, not even really. I mean, not on multiple choice tests anyway. It's mostly about amendments and political movements. But the one thing the one little bit of California history that sneaks in there is the gold rush, because it's so important to so many different facets of Californian life and American life. So many people became Americans because of the gold rush. And all of that goes back to the man right there, James Marshall, and Sutter's Mill. The road that gets you from, I believe from 49, or as the 49, as they say in California, to the monument here is California Highway 53 or 153, which the sign says it is the shortest highway in California. Like many other aspects of California history, that's not entirely the truth. So let's take it over to Chandler back in Sacramento to show you what the actual shortest highway in California is. So I am here in Sacramento at the actual shortest highway in California, the Tower Bridge. So this was constructed in 1935. It was originally painted silver, but then they painted it gold, and it's now so gold and shiny, I'm gonna have to use some sort of film trick magic to even see it behind me there. It's so shiny and glimmering, just like the gold of Sutter's Mill. But it is State Highway 275. It is a drawbridge, so that it's going over the Sacramento River, allows boats to go underneath it by lifting up there. And Don't know why they have it over there at Sutter's Mill. That's the actual shortest highway, because it's not. It's this baby back here in downtown Sacramento. And I will now pass it back over to you over there at Sutter's Mill. Well, I never did have too much luck. Didn't find any gold here today. But hopefully you found some golden nuggets of wisdom in this week's episode. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. That way I can take even more of you along with me on my journeys. Until next time, vaya con Dios. Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling Clementine.